At the heart of one of the world's most closed-off regimes, North Korea, lies a reality often ignored. Prison camps where thousands of people are locked up, most of them for crimes they never committed. These men, women, and children live in inhumane conditions where hunger, torture, and forced labor dominate their daily lives. Before being divided as we know it today, Korea was originally a unified country. In 1910, during its annexation by Japan, the country plunged into a dark period of repression and exploitation, sowing the seeds of division. It wasn't until the end of World War II, in 1945, that Korea was freed from Japanese occupation and divided into two parts, the North, occupied by the Soviets, and the South, occupied by the Americans. It wasn't until 1953, at the end of the Korean War, that the country was divided as we know it today into two entities, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, also known as North Korea, and the Republic of Korea, also known as South Korea. Influenced by his ties to the Soviet Union, Kim Il-sung, the founder of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK, quickly adopted Stalin's repressive methods. Inspired by the Soviet Gulag system, he established the first Kwanliso in North Korea, which were labor camps intended to crush any political dissidents and severely punish those considered threats to his authoritarian regime. These camps quickly became one of the main strategies of the Kim dynasty to consolidate power and eliminate any form of resistance. Today, every North Korean knows what happens in these camps. Torture, famine, forced labor, and executions await those who dare to challenge the Kim regime. By establishing an omnipresent fear, these camps have turned the population into harmless individuals, too scared of being sent there to dare to oppose the regime. Approximately 120,000 people have disappeared in North Korea. According to Amnesty International's 2021 report, these people are actually imprisoned in hidden labor camps across the country. They are incarcerated for having challenged the regime or Kim Jong-un in some way. Their families are often left without news, and these arrests occur in utmost secrecy. Today, it is known that there are 8 camps in North Korea, holding between 3,000 and 50,000 prisoners. 4 of these camps are political prisoner camps, called Kwanliso. The other 4 are long-term labor camps, called Kyohwaso. However, this is just the tip of the iceberg. According to various testimonies, 12 other camps could also be hidden in the country. In total, there could be around 20 camps across the country. Among them is the infamous Camp 14 Kaichon, located north of Pyongyang. This camp is intended to punish the enemies of the state. According to testimonies, it houses around 15,000 prisoners, serving life sentences. Victims of the 3 generations punishment are also found in this camp, a policy of imprisoning a detainee's family for 3 generations because of the offense they committed. Just next to it is Camp 15, or Yodok, which is one of the most notorious camps in North Korea.
It was a life of hard labor. 30% of new prisoners would die, and we were so malnourished we would eat rats and earthworms to survive.
Testifies Kang Chol-hwan, an escaped former prisoner. Every day, prisoners are forced to work to exhaustion while battling hunger, fear, and violence. Living conditions are so harsh that survival itself is an achievement. Kim Young-soon, another former detainee, speaks of a horrible life.
You have no time to talk or see other people. The intensity of the work is high, and you have to work until nightfall. It was truly hell on earth. You can die at any time. Loggers can break a limb while cutting trees and die. They can be run over or take a wrong step and die. Some resort to eating poisonous plants like hemlock or a toad out of hunger and die, while others catch pellagra and die. When you have pellagra, your anus opens up, and all the corn you ate comes out. It's not an exaggeration to say that the roads in the miserable Yodok prison camp were covered in corpses.
To the north is Camp 22, At its peak in the 1990s, it held about 50,000 prisoners. According to the North Korean dictatorship, the camp was closed in mid-2012, but satellite images have shown that it remains inhabited and active. According to a former guard of this camp, An Myung-chol, the detainees were like walking skeletons, dwarves, and cripples in rags. In addition to that, he claims that every year, between 1,500 and 2,000 prisoners, mainly children, died of malnutrition. He also testified about how prisoners were treated inside the camp.
People in the camps are not treated like humans. They are like flies that can be crushed. We were encouraged to kill those who tried to escape. We had the right to kill them, and if we brought back the body, we could be rewarded by being sent to university.
Alright, as we've seen, life in these camps is far from pleasant. But maybe you're wondering how so many people end up imprisoned there. After all, wouldn't it be enough to just not break the law to avoid trouble? In reality, it's a bit more complicated than that. As you might expect in a country under dictatorship, it takes very little to find yourself behind bars. For example, in 2014, Lim Ok-kyung, a refugee, was arrested because the police found Chinese and South Korean contraband appliances in her home. Kim Jong-un, on the other hand, was sent to Camp 15 simply because she was friends with Song Hee-rim, a famous North Korean actress who was also the mistress of Kim Jong-il, the former North Korean leader. The regime imprisoned her to ensure that this secret would never be leaked. Her imprisonment is an example of North Korea's guilt by association policy, where people can be punished for the actions of their relatives or associates. Other reasons for imprisonment include criticizing the government, attempting to flee the country, or practicing a religion, particularly Christianity. Adopting a Western hairstyle or fashion, which are considered dangerous poisons by Kim Jong-un, can also land someone in jail. Once imprisoned, it's their word against the regimes, and we all know who's going to have the final say. In such cases, people disappear and are sent to Kwanliso, labor camps.
0% of them knew why they were there,
said An Myung-chol, a guard for 8 years in North Korea. Even today, it remains difficult to know precisely what the inside of these camps looks like, but thanks to testimonies from survivors, we can get a concrete idea of some of them. This is the case, for example, of the Onsong Detention Center. Primarily used to detain North Koreans forcibly repatriated from China. This detention center is located in the North Hamgyong province, less than a kilometer from the Chinese border. It is often described as hell on earth by survivors because of its brutal conditions, including severe human rights violations, such as torture and violent treatment. The interior of the camp is organized as follows. First, there is a personal belongings storage area, followed by a video surveillance room, 2 preliminary examination rooms, the head of section's office, 2 offices, a staff room for the guards, a kitchen, followed by an outdoor exercise area for the prisoners, a bathroom for staff, and finally, 10 cells. Detainees are first taken to the video surveillance room, where they are thoroughly searched to prevent any smuggling or the introduction of money. The guards then take them to the personal belongings storage area, where their possessions are confiscated, and they are made to wear prison uniforms. To enter their cells, detainees must crawl and pass through a small door that is 3 feet tall and 2.5 feet wide. The size is not random, it is deliberately designed to humiliate prisoners, dehumanizing them and reducing them to an animal-like status. Once inside, a typical cell holds 10 detainees, sometimes up to 20. The detainees must then sit cross-legged, their heads lowered, for more than 12 hours a day. Why with their heads lowered? Because the Workers' Party of Korea considers these detainees as inferior human beings, unworthy of direct eye contact with law enforcement. Here, detainees are deliberately treated like cattle, to the extent that they are designated by a number instead of their names. Additionally, the detainees are under surveillance 24/7. First by cameras that film the 10 cells, and also by a guard who checks on the detainees every hour. The slightest movement or noise results in severe punishment, including torture.
Si nous
If we
bougions,
moved,
nous
we were
étions
punished by standing up and sitting down, doing push-ups, sit-ups, or hanging onto metal bars. If the guards were really angry, they would come into the cell and beat us. It happened every day. If it wasn't in our cell, it was in others. We could hear everything. It was meant to keep up the tension. There were moments when I was almost ready to give up on life.
As for hygiene, detainees are not allowed to wash without the permission of a correctional officer. Most of the time, the answer is no. But even when they are allowed to, conditions still apply. It is only once a week with water from a bucket used for the toilets. And of course, personal hygiene products like soap, toilet paper, and toothbrushes are not provided. Regarding food, detainees receive 3 meals a day, but it's always the same menu. They have to make do with a small bowl of steamed corn kernels, coarsely ground with their husks, accompanied by a bowl of soup, boiled water, and salted cabbage. A former detainee, Mrs. Lee, even said,
I weighed 70 pounds when I was released from detention. I could even see my bones when I held my hands up to the sun. I was just a thin layer of skin and bones.
It is not uncommon, therefore, for some detainees, faced with hunger, to start eating insects, rodents, snakes, tree bark, or even grass to supplement their diet. But if they are caught eating these things, they can be beaten or killed by the prison guards.
We were not treated like humans, but like some sort of animal.
The comparison to animals doesn't end there. The cells resemble cages more than living spaces. They are so small that detainees have to contort themselves to find a place to sleep or sit upright. At night, the situation becomes even more unbearable due to the cold. In winter, temperatures inside the cells are so freezing that Ali Lameda, a foreign prisoner, recounted seeing his toenails fall off and his feet covered in sores due to frostbite.
The windows were frosted and my feet were frozen. They stayed that way for a month and a half. My toes were swollen from frostbite. I still feel the effects today. Doctors eventually came to see me, but my toenails had fallen off and my feet were covered in sores.
Besides malnutrition, exhaustion, forced labor, and disease, another crucial factor of mortality in North Korean camps is the torture inflicted on prisoners. Beatings, unbearable stress positions, prolonged isolation. The methods used to break the prisoners both physically and mentally are countless.
Your legs and arms are tied together, then you are suspended in the air. After being beaten this way, you end up giving up on life.
The pigeon torture. During this torture, the detainees' hands are handcuffed behind their backs, then hung on a wall or a ceiling hook, in such a way that the prisoners cannot sit or stand.
When you are made to sit and stand 500 times with a blanket over you in a hot, stifling room full of prisoners, you no longer consider yourself a human being.
The pump torture involves forcing prisoners to do hundreds of squats until exhaustion. Mainly used during interrogations, this torture is aimed at extracting confessions from prisoners. Each of these postures requires standing in an uncomfortable position. The crane, for example, involves stretching the arms parallel to the ground with weights hanging from the wrists. The airplane position requires the detainee to stand on one leg with arms extended. Finally, the motorcycle position forces the detainee to sit, with knees bent and hands placed as if holding motorcycle handlebars. The clock torture, mainly inflicted on pregnant women, it involves forcing them to stand mimicking a clock, moving one arm every minute. This ordeal, which can last from a few hours to several days, continues until the victim suffers from dehydration and total exhaustion. The Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea also reports inhumane treatment suffered by women in the camps. Ji Hyuna, a 34-year-old prisoner, detailed one of the atrocious scenes she witnessed during her incarceration.
It was the first time we saw a baby being born. We looked at that baby and we were so happy. But suddenly, we heard footsteps. The security guard came in and told us to put the baby in the water, upside down. The mother started pleading, but the guard kept beating her, and the newborn baby was crying. With trembling hands, the mother took the baby and placed it in the water, face down. The baby stopped crying, and we saw a bubble emerge from the baby's mouth.
In addition to infanticides, numerous methods are used to induce abortions, such as traumatizing the uterus by violent blows, forcing women to perform exhausting physical labor to trigger premature labor, inserting chemicals or herbs to expel the fetus, physically extracting the fetus using instruments, lastly, administering medication to kill the fetus and induce premature birth. This documentary could never have been made without the courageous testimonies of a few survivors from these camps, such as Kim Jong-un, Kang Chol-hwan, and Ali Lameda. Their varied accounts have allowed us to concretely understand what life inside the camps is like, from the infrastructure to the living conditions, inhumane treatment, and ever-present hunger. According to some NGOs, it is estimated that the number of unnatural deaths that occurred in detention in North Korean labor camps could reach 20%. And it's not likely to stop anytime soon. In 2021, Kim Jong-un reportedly ordered the expansion of political prisoner camps across the country in anticipation of increased repression.